Hello and welcome to today's conversation here with George Ayoub. I'm Zach Mayhew, independent videographer. George, I brought you here to talk about your retirement and what is held and what you look forward to. And
The door's closed. You're not going to let me out here, are you?
yeah, I don't think so. First question for you is, over the years, what has changed in journalism since you started?
Well, I think the big thing, and most people see it, is, you know, doing the news online. But I think it's more than just that technology. I think the big thing is, for me, I've had to change how I thought about a story, and it used to be I'd go and I'd say, well, I want to do a column about Zach Mayhew doing something great, and I'd think about it, I'd interview you, do some background, then I'd go write it, and then the next morning it'd appear in the paper. But now when you look at an event or a person or something, I need to think about, what can I put on Twitter right away? Is this good video? Will this make good TV? The whole sound. What's the background look like? Is this a breaking news story? I mean, all this. It's the thinking, I think, that's changed the most, at least for me. The other thing I think that's going on is that people get information way differently than they used to, and I think your generation gets it more in bursts, online bursts, than they do sitting down with the newspaper every morning. And I think that's the thing that we have to address in journalism. And I think the Independent's done a good job with that. Because, I'm one of those guys that read the newspaper, 2 newspapers every morning. But I also, because of work, I get up my information through Twitter and online sites and that sort of thing. So I think that's the big thing. It's not just the technology. I think it's the way we have to think about it.
What do you think the hardest change has been to adapt to?
For me, personally? Oh, I think that the hardest change probably for me is the timing of it all. About 10 years ago, I kind of started thinking about, well, I wonder how long I'll write columns and, do some, work as an editor, those kinds of things. And then, the paper came to me and said, we really want you to be all in on the online products and things we're going to do. And I think the hard thing for me was the hardest thing for me was making that shift, because it wasn't just a shift away from columns. It was like putting my foot in a whole other arena. And so I had one foot in the old way and one foot in the new way. And I think the hard thing for me was the balance of that. I had to, as I said earlier, I had to think about the print side, and then I had to think about the online side. And I think that was the biggest thing for me. And I think it took me a couple years to kind of adjust to that. The online streaming of games that we would do, that really helped me. And I tell you what it got me in touch with was, I was a broadcasting major originally, and it got me kind of in touch with that whole universe, and that helped a lot. I had experience on the air, and that helped, kind of put me there, and to stay there, and to think, we do news online, we do news in print, and be in both worlds. That's kind of my thing. You do that a little bit with your still photography, where you kind of you're kind of in the print world and kind of in the online world. But I think eventually most reporters will have that foot in each in one world there.
Tell the readers what goes into each column. What's the thought process?
Oh, I just get lucky. Well, first of all, you have to have a good idea, and a good idea, I think, is probably, for me, I mean, there's a number of different kinds of columns, but the good idea for me is one that has a kind of a universal message, to it. And so, I get the idea, and then I just, do I need to interview somebody? Do I need to talk to somebody? I try to do that face to face. It's not always possible. Then I do a little research, do some background on the subject, and then, I just start putting it together. I usually write from the beginning to end, and then go back and rewrite it 4 or 5 times. That's kind of the process, that I go through. But there's a number of different kinds of columns that I do too. And you have 700 words or so, and so you kind of have to stick with that. It used to be that I would have an idea, and it was a good idea, but it wasn't enough. And that's how Three Thoughts for Thursday started, because these were ideas that I couldn't get a whole column out of. And so I went to Jim Faddis and RJ Post, and our managing editor, assistant managing editor, and I said, I have all these ideas, and I'd like to express them, but it's not going to be a full column. And so they were on board with that. And so that's I've been doing Three Thoughts for Thursday for about 5 years now, and I really like its short little 200-word shot there. And so that's kind of the process that I go through. And I used to think I needed to read it the next morning in the paper, and I did, but I don't do that anymore.
Yeah,
I trust the editors.
That's good. One of the things that's always amazed me is your knowledge of words.
Uh-huh.
Where does that come from?
Yeah, some deep, dark place in my mind, huh? I don't know. My parents were, particularly my mom, and she still is at 93. She was a voracious reader. And both my parents read the newspapers back and forth, or front to back rather. And I think that was part of it. I read, not necessarily really early, but I read a lot, and it's just something I always found joy in the words and being playful with them and what they do. And I took a class in college. I took a couple classes, a linguistics class, but a class called Scientific Greek and Latin. Full disclosure here, I took it because I thought it was going to be easy, but it wasn't. Or maybe it was for some people, but it wasn't for me. But anyway, it had all the Latin and Greek roots of real common words. Mm-hmm. And so that really, that was really right in my wheelhouse. And I do a crossword puzzle every day. I do the jumbles. I like that sort of thing. One of the things I might do in retirement is I might dabble with making my own crossword puzzles and sell them to the independent and become independently wealthy. There
you go.
So, I guess, the answer to the question is it was one of those things that it was always present in my life. And I'm glad I have a lot of words to draw on.
Yeah. What do you tell young people who are thinking about getting into journalism?
Well, it's a vow of poverty. I tell them that, I guess the thing I say, Zach, mostly is, do it for the right reasons. Do it because you want to search for the truth. You like to tell stories. You think it's important that a city the size of Grand Island has a daily newspaper that is the official record of the history of Grand Island. I mean, that's what we are. Those kinds of, those kind of principled things. I think that you have to have that. And some of it you might not know until you get into it. But it has to be more than just, getting your name in the paper. It has to be more than being on the 5 o'clock news. It has to be more than being recognized when you go to the grocery store. Mm-hmm. You go to Hy-Vee and people look at you like, do I know you? That sort of thing. That's nice and everything, but, you have to have more to it than that. And then the other thing I tell them is that, it's a skill set. You have a skill set, and I have a skill set, and you're not going to do well in this business unless you have the skill set. You have it, or in the interest, and then you go to school and you hone it. But as you and I both know, you've got to be working on it all the time. You've got to get better all the time. I read a quote by Ben Bradlee that who was the longtime editor of the Washington Post, said, let's go out and make a really good newspaper, and then tomorrow let's make a better one. And I think that's the other thing I tell young people that want to consider journalism or anything really. You got to get better. That should be your goal.
I know that you're a pretty humble guy, but what do you hope the readers have learned from you?
I don't know if they've learned anything. I think that I hope the thing they've learned from me that there's a lot of different ways to think about something, and it's not always the left and right way, the conservative liberal way, the Democratic Republican way. There's a lot of different ways to think about things, and that the most important thing I guess I hope that readers have learned is that sometimes you have to think about things on your own and then draw some conclusions, and part of all that is that this kind of goes back to something you asked me earlier about one of the big changes, is that the internet gives you lots and lots of information, and some of it's actually true, mm-hmm. but a lot of it's not. And I think it's harder now for us to look at things and to gather information that is factual and true and it doesn't have a spin to it. So I hope that I've left them with this whole thing of the not only thinking, but the process of thinking. And that one of the things that I read recently in a book called The Metaphysical Club is that there's a difference between an idea and an ideology. And I hope that I left them with ideas and not an ideology.
Yeah. Okay. What are you going to miss the most about retirement?
I'm going to miss you.
Here.
So.
Yeah, I'm sure.
No, really, I think I said in my last column, one of the things I really love about this place, and I'm sure you find it now, is that, you know, the newsroom's a great place to work. I mean, you have really bright, committed, intelligent, funny people here, you know, who are really passionate about what they do and really passionate about the world. And I love that intellectual discourse. You know, our meetings that we have, our budget meetings that, you know, in the morning, the ones that I sometimes get to, you know. I love that sort of thing. And I think I was telling Senator Annette Dubas, we were at a function together, and after she left the Senate, you know, I was telling her I was worried about this, and she said that, you know, she had to find other outlets because, you know, she was in there thinking, working, doing all that stuff, and usually and engaged in the intellectual discovery and all those things. And so I think that's the thing I'm going to miss most and seek it out. And I may just have to come down here to these meetings every day.
Well, you're
and
always
do
welcome.
that. Yeah. So, you know, I'm going to miss all you guys and your capabilities because, as I said in my column, all of you may be better. And you know, it's great when you work in a place like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What? My last question: what does retirement hold for you?
Well, you know, I want to continue to write. I'll probably write a couple books, and you know, at some point I might write more columns. I don't know if I want to start a blog or I'm not sure, but I will continue to write. So that holds that for sure. You know, I hope I get to go watch my son play more baseball. You know, that's a big thing. He's kind of at that point where he's trying to get on with a professional, you know, organization of some kind, and so we'll know more about that in the next couple of weeks. So that'll be our travel. You know, that's what we hope our travel will be, and we want to do that. And you know, I'll stay active. I have lots of books I want to read, and you know, I want to go to Arizona in January. You know, I told my wife the other day, God, I can't take another winter. You know, it's just kind of wears on me. But you know, I guess that the thing about being your own boss sort of thing, I'm really looking forward to that sort of deal. I've had some job offers, Zach, you know, part-time job offers, and I'm weighing a couple of those, but not real heavily.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Well, thank you for coming down
You
here.
bet.
And,
great working with you, buddy.
It's been a great 5 months, and disappointed that it's not longer, but you taught me a lot.
Thanks, Zach.
Thanks for joining us.